Radio Marathon for June 14th, 2014. My name is Gary Hendershot, and I am broadcasting to you live from my secret underground bunker only 12 miles south of Washington, D.C. And right now I have waiting in the wings Lloyd Rosen and Dr. Dean Lloyd, so please do stand by. Going to bring them live right now. Guys, it's all yours. Take them away.
All right. Thank you, Gary. Well, greetings, everybody, and welcome to the United We Evolve portion of today's United We Strike Marathon. My name is Lloyd Rosen, philosopher, author, health consultant, and through the medium of the human psyche, my art is facilitating the evolutionary unfoldment of human potential. Along with my good friend and colleague, Dr. Dean Lloyd, we are here peddling comprehensive intelligence to our planetary citizenry. United, we strike. Don't buy, don't comply. Ask why. What are we striking against? What are we striking for? What blow can we deliver that will somehow come to improve the quality of human existence? There are, as I'm sure you've come to be aware, a number of very thoughtful, knowledgeable, dedicated, and caring people who participate on the UWS Marathon. And they are making a valiant effort to present critically needed perspectives and hitherto concealed information about the short-sighted, expedient compromises and underhanded manipulations that are psychologically retarding human potential and threaten to undermine the quality of life, along with the possible dire consequences of even extinguishing human existence. Obviously, it is critically important that these shadowy blockages and emotionally constipated Stone Age patterns that are distorting social interaction be exposed to and dispersed by the light of understanding. But, as we'll be discussing, to fight against something also keeps you bound to what you're trying to get away from. Rather, I suggest as a more appropriate vector for orienting toward our situation, you're either going towards what you want, that is, what can truly satisfy and fulfill, or you're getting rid of whatever is impeding your more expansive progress. From such a perspective, there is nothing negative to fight against. Anything that obstructs your evolving potential must eventually prove to be nothing more than a defended misunderstanding, so that all experience, whether personal or extended into the global collective, becomes an opportunity for resolution. Thereby, experience becomes, so to speak, grist for the mill of consciousness. On today's broadcast, Dean and I want to begin to extend these considerations beyond what isn't working adequately and towards what's involved in restoring functional balance and furthering the optimization of enhanced performance capability in every aspect of social interaction. In other words, we're going to start to scrutinize the whole human rigmarole through the solution-oriented perspective of the healing art. To do so, we will begin to evaluate how we're currently processing, how we got here, what is and is not working, and what is involved in applying the healing art to bring these various aspects of the whole of the human experience into a dynamic of harmonized balance. In the months that follow, we will be considering health for the individual in a socially cultured collective, for the global body politic of humanity, in the life-sustaining ecosystems, in the overall dynamic of our planetary being. And of course, consciousness, the offerings of various systems of thought structuring, philosophy, psychology, religion, and an assortment of meta-esoteric systems. Then as we continue throughout the year, we'll be using our healing art perspective to evaluate and further evolve the functional aspects of commerce, politics, business, social dynamics, interpersonal relations, intimacy, science, education, along with many other futuristic aspects involved in the evolutionary unfolding of our human potential. Just to set the tone for what we're about today. Dean, please say hi and jump in.
And a good hello to everybody on the United We Strike Radio. And yes, we are here to evolve. Am and I are going to discuss how we get ourselves out of this mess we're in. Well, I'll help you with two things. One, with the recognition of what we're up against, and two, how we're able to understand our own process with Am. He's going to give us some details on how to do that. I am an Oriental medical doctor. I have been practicing for 28 years with naturopathy. I'm an inventor. I'm a professor. I have a number of inventions. And one of my favorite things to do is share this information. And what I was hearing from Am when he started to talk about this, something came up in me. And it was that, why is it that I'm feeling so angry that I was led down this path in the first place? I was lied to. No one asked me if it was okay that I was being poisoned by the food I was eating. The water that I was drinking was polluted. The air I was breathing was toxic. No one asked me that I was going to participate in a system that was designed to enslave me. No one asked me my permission on any of these things. So how do I deal with myself in my attitude and how I manage my energy in dealing with these problems? I know Am has a lot to say on the introduction of this, so we only have an hour, so let's get rolling. Go for it, Am.
Thank you, Dean. All right, want to kind of structure this as a thought process. First of all, how do we motivate ourselves to get out of bed in the morning, to groom ourselves, to go to work, to relate to people, to take on the media and all the implications it spews forth, to participate in a representative democracy? What is the overall paradigm that we use to base all our other actions upon? You know, we kind of, let's see, a paradigm is a set of values. It's a pattern, a template. It becomes the working standard, the prototype, sometimes the archetype around which we try to adapt our thoughts and our behavior. Let's look at some examples. If you believe, as many people did for a while, understandably so, when you look at the human development, that the world is flat, well, then you build up a whole social infrastructure based around that. There's limited space, limited expansion. The religions fortify it. The social conduct is there. Then somebody goes out and discovers, no, the world isn't flat. It's round. There's more space open than we realized. And all of a sudden, everything has to be reevaluated and changed in light of that. Maybe you think you're sick because you're a sinful person and demons are disrupting your health and you're locked into superstition. Well, if you do, then you conduct yourself fervently, emotionally in one particular pattern. Then maybe you find out, no, it's microorganisms, each with their own characteristic. They can affect the metabolism and the nervous system in particular ways. We're going to employ science to measure them, understand their interactive rates. Well, now you have a whole different paradigm for dealing with problems. Maybe you have been brought up in a paradigm that says inherited privilege, dictatorial, autocratic rule. You have to kowtow to it. You have to go along with it. You have to adapt around what people tell you is right, whatever rationalizations they propagandize. Or maybe you find out that, that each one of us has the inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that we can take responsibility. In other words, exercise our inherent ability to respond to circumstances and start to make decisions. Well, then you have a different paradigm. Fighting disease or healing imbalances, the paradigms of today. We're hearing a lot of talk about the problems that we're facing, and we need to hear these things because we are facing them. But there is a difference between idealization and actual understanding and application. We often tend to confuse our thoughts about things. Look what's going on here, and okay, it could be this way, it should be that way, they shouldn't be doing this. Great. Okay. But that points you in a direction, either away from something or possibly towards a better way of interacting. But that's not the actuality. And a lot of times we get caught just in the information. Meanwhile, we've got all these routines we've got to accommodate ourselves to. Gee, did my bowels move adequately today because I feel like lousy? Did I get enough sleep? Do they think I'm attractive? Am I likable? Am I going to have my paycheck coming in? Gee, the kids are doing whatever it is we do. That takes up a lot of time and energy. So we run around thinking all these thoughts. Some of them are propagandized through the media for obvious reasons that we'll get into. But a lot of times we're touched by the possibilities of what we could be. We could be loving. We could be more intelligent. We could be caring. We could be healthier. But the difference between what we envision and bringing it into functional adaptability, well, that's a big difference. And we want to start to talk about how we make that transition. Dean, did you want to jump in here before I ramble on?
Sure. No, it's the question that comes into play when the audience hears, well, then what do I do when I have a disease or condition that I'm told is only treatable in a particular way, or I can only view a particular situation. Let's say, bombing one of the countries, over there, away from us that are supposedly our enemy. That I'm supposed to have this attitude. In other words, if I'm dependent on someone else's information, or let's say I'm dependent on a drug to survive, what does that leave me? Does that leave me any room for any growth, anywhere to explore a better way to do something? I wouldn't, for example, in a religion that says that you will not be saved, you will not be holy unless you eat this way, act this way, pray this way, speak this way. This is the way that I've been programmed, so this must be how I identify myself. When we are in that place of disempowered fear, doubt, or any kind of degree of confusion, this means we're not understanding what we're dealing with. So if we come to that place, we need to know what the difference is between understanding or having control or being in a place where we can identify where the problem is or what the problem is, and knowing and being excruciatingly honest about this when we really don't understand what is going on around us. And that's a nice place for me to leave off there, Ann. Go ahead.
Yeah, Dean. Well, okay, people, think about it. What does all of humanity have? What's the one thing that we all have in common? Wherever you are on the globe, whatever your level of social or cultural development, wherever you are in the most advanced countries on the social food chain, what's running humanity? One word: ignorance. You can't, to paraphrase, serve two masters. You can't serve both understanding and ignorance. Ignorance and its run-amok offspring, that is, fear, doubt, confusion, and anxiety, are what basically is dominating the scene, and it has been since Stone Age times. But as we get more access, as we expand our intellects, the discrepancy, this difference between what makes sense to us, how we'd like to be, what we want to get rid of, and where we feel constrained to operate from becomes magnified. In each one of us, that turns into a war, and our physical bodies, our neurobolics, the metabolism and the interaction of our nervous system, suffer the consequences. Socially, war, baby. There is nothing new. You know, it's interesting hearing some of the reports, very valuable information, but there's nothing new. It's just more and more intense. This comes out of a process of insecurity. When you actually understand, not just have a brilliant, comprehensive intellectual evaluation, but when you actually understand how something works, you see its construction, its interactive range of motion, how you can independently access it. You can pick it up, put it down, leave it alone, not just by idea, but in actuality, you've integrated it. You've inclusively integrated the potentials of whatever you're considering. Then you have control. It's clear, simple, direct, and it works every time. There's no exceptions. You can pick it up, put it down, leave it alone, rearrange it at will. But when we don't understand, we're controlled by our ignorance. And out of ignorance and the fear, doubt, confusion, and anxiety, the destabilizing emotional factors it generates, we armor ourselves. We become hardened, coarsened, desensitized. We are looking to keep at bay what we usually try to avoid, we're in denial of. We're trying to avoid that it's even there. We pump ourselves up, and of course that keeps us from getting the insight and information we want. So coming around to, let's look at what we're dealing with. Every system of organization that comes into existence establishes itself against the inherent possibility of its eventual demise. It's sort of, life has a built-in sword of Damocles hanging over its head. Disagreements, contention, and rebellion against a system of distribution, whatever it may be, political, religious, economic, are built into the system as a tension counterpoint of justification, which may inadvertently and ironically help to maintain the system. Fighting against a particular system helps to perpetuate the survival protocols of that system. Now, we come replete with perspectives, tools, techniques, and methodologies. Systems are basically, whatever the system, is a socially structured way for dealing with the distribution of power. Now, we hear a lot of talk about the misuse, the underhanded, nefarious misuse of power. What is power? On the basic level, power, whatever power you're concerned with, is energy that has been consciously directed. It's energy that's harnessed and directed in a particular way to achieve a particular outcome. Power, in and of itself, has no intention of its own. Power is not good, it's not bad, it's not right, it's not wrong. It strictly depends on the quality of the intelligence that uses it. And let me distinguish. Intelligence is not to be confused with intellect. There's a lot of people very bright on the intellectual level. They've assimilated a lot of material, and they can cross-correlate it in the disciplines and so come up with brilliant, innovative sites. But that's not necessarily intelligence. Regardless of your level of intellectual development, and it certainly helps to have more tools in your psychological tool chest, regardless of that level of intellectual development, intelligence is the ability to look at any considered situation see what it makes available, what the variables are, what the range of interaction is, and what's the most appropriate, adequate, and effective way to utilize those resources at the moment. This is an ongoing adaptation. Of course, we don't adapt very quickly. We get locked in. We have to justify ourselves. Let's consider the difference between real power and pretentiously posturing aggressive positioning. Now, when you really have access, you understand you don't have to go around defending your position. It's there. It's at your beck and call. You can use it or not use it. Combine it, rearrange it. You can transform it if you have the skills. And that leaves you open. It leaves you sensitive. It makes you kind of tender. You don't have to constantly remind yourself you're the top dog because look at what I've got control over. But if you don't have that, then you have to really pump up, baby. And I deserve this because, well, I've got a whole list of rationalizations, and I've jockeyed myself into a position where I can prove to you that I have more access. Therefore, I deserve to be powerful. It's like looking in the mirror and saying, "Yeah, I look pretty good, so I guess I must be pretty good." Could it be that the so-called powerful people in positions of authority aren't really yet powerful enough? You know, I would suggest we need to help these would-be corporate potentates become more operatively human, not by doing them the disservice of sanctioning their ill-conceived, overly compensating, imbalanced delusions, but by helping them to become more whole. Somebody has the skills and somebody has to push the buttons and has to decide about the distribution of resources. But right now, it's not coming from a psychologically integrated state of mind. It's coming from these old Stone Age emotional patterns that no matter how brilliant a person may be or accomplished, that's not what's running the show. And we want to talk about that. But Dean, please.
Okay, so I have a question for you, Am.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm not given a way out, I want to run away. That would be a normal response, right? I'm going to get out of this crummy situation no matter what it takes, right? Go to another country. Sometimes it's valid and necessary. Isolate myself from all the controls on my life. That's what I'll do. I'll get it on an island somewhere, or I'll go out in the desert and no one will see me and I won't interact. That way I won't be controlled. Is this of my making? That's my question. Is it easier to blame it on lawmakers of my government, or is it someone in my family that is causing me to have my inner discord, insecurity? Since I was trained to give my power away, what do I do with my feelings that are, I won't be able to change my world? Am I sucked in?
Well, it's a good question, Dean. And what I want to do is intrigue all of you with some ideas, some insights. You know, if you believe you're chattel and you have to go along with whatever the ruling elite prescribe, that's one thing. If you suddenly the idea that you could have your own, you can live your life the way it makes the most sense to you. Of course, keeping in mind that people have rights and we need some form of social conduct that doesn't trample on those. But that the idea of liberty, of personal freedom is an idea. But once that takes root, well, then everything starts to change around it. And that idea didn't pop out of thin air. It was the matriculation of hundreds of years of development, especially coming together after the medieval Dark Ages, from the Renaissance, from some of the better thinkers that were around at the time. I'd like to intrigue people with some ideas, and whatever I'm putting forth, I want you to know I can give you the specifics on how to actualize it. It's within your range. But Dean brought up a good point. If it's understanding what it comes down to, as I said, no system, no method, no tool or technique functions any better than the quality of the intelligence, the comprehensive understanding that uses it. So right now, against our reason, our desires, our better judgment, we are continually trashing ourselves. Somebody may, sucker us into that line of thinking, but then we pick up the ball and run with it. We do this because whatever we rationalize around it, however we try to justify it or avoid it, we are full of unresolved patterns that we don't want. They're counterproductive. They're injurious to our health. They suck our energy, our vitality. They limit our potential, and yet we're stuck with them. And I would like to intrigue people with the idea that this can be once and for all, finally, after our long sludge through the ages, be resolved, that the human nervous system can be liberated so that you can't be pushed around. Whatever the parasite, be it a physical, bacterial, virological parasite, whether it be a thought control parasite that a lot of people are talking about on various shows, there must be host receptivity before a parasite can lodge itself and have an effect. If someone is out to sucker you into a way of looking at things that's detrimental to your well-being, counterproductive, but it may suit their purposes and needs, they can't get you to be this way. They have to set you up to do it to yourself. Now, most people don't understand where this is coming from, including the people trying to do some of the behavioral programming. But they do observe the patterns that people have been locked into. As a matter of fact, they do whatever they can to further the patterns, because the more reliable the patterns, the better you can push whatever product or thought agenda you may have. So I would like to intrigue people with the idea that this can be broken, that your feelings, and we talked about this a little bit on past shows, and this applies to everybody on the planet, whatever your level of development, whatever you've come to understand so far, more power to you. But feelings are, and there are gradients of them, are basically your response patterns. They come off of the deep genetic structuring, the unconscious needs of the organism unconsciously to perpetuate itself and reproduce itself. They overlay, they become more complex, and complicated with cultural underpinnings and social adaptations. Then they become mentally structured into emotional responses. And right now, everybody's bouncing back and forth. If somebody says, "You're a goddamn uptight ass," well, who knows what goddamn means? Who knows what uptight means? Who knows what ass means? It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But the minute you say, "No, I'm not," you can't say that, or, "Well, maybe I am, but it's not my fault," whatever it is, then you are plugging in definitions, but even more so, you're plugging in feelings that have been activated by that. In other words, they didn't get you, they got you to get to yourselves. That's the parasite taking root, so to speak. In this case, it would be an emotional parasite. So I would like to intrigue people with the idea that you can be free of all this, that you can end the war between your thoughts and feelings, gain full access to what's been called the subconscious, reroute those feelings in the way that's most comfortable for you, and readapt them anytime you get better insight and information, and have them take an effect on your metabolism, so that instead of fighting against yourself, all this energy that's been knotted, siphoned off, and distorted becomes returned to you for clearer thinking, deeper relaxation, whatever you want to use it for. Now, that's just one of the things I want to intrigue people with. But, Dean, did you want to pick up from there?
Yeah, it's about that phrase you said, that this, whatever was going on regarding the new law that passed, takes away more rights, or we can't see what's in our food. We don't know if it's genetically modified or not. And if we're riled up about this, there's a time and place to be motivated by having our rights taken away. And this is an important part of our understanding how to direct the energy that's coming at us, because it is coming at us. It's being we're being, as a culture, more and more, less and less, I should have put it this way, less and less capable of turning things around from the outside. In other words, what Am is saying is that when they got you to get to yourself, we're not in control of the patterns that had been programmed into us. And these patterns were, okay, you're motivated by something that you don't understand. Really? What am I motivated by? Okay, I'm playing the answer myself after I ask myself a question, right? I'm asking myself, what am I motivated by? Why am I even doing this? Why am I putting so much energy into, providing myself a safe place? Because I can't find a safe place on the inside. I'm going to make myself a fortress to make it so that I have a safe place on the outside. Now, there's some obvious reasons why we should prepare ourselves for a disaster or a coming world event. That's fine. What I don't see as often is people who are doing it and being happy about their process, or being a complete emotionally conscious person. And that means that they're not being motivated by fear. They're doing because they're logically aware that this makes sense. There's a reason. So I'm going to ask Am about this, about are we being motivated right now by survival, or are we being motivated by something else? And if it is something else, what is it?
Well, it's a hodgepodge right now. This is the inherited cesspool of our advancement. We've been slugging it through the ages, trying to secure the basics and get as much pleasure and avoid pain. But we haven't really understood what we're doing. We obviously have had brilliant, innovative technological breakthroughs. And boy, it's just getting started. We're unlocking the various interactions of nature and measuring them through science. But basically, we've got a big, sludgy cesspool of expedient compromises going on. To answer that, Dean, let's bring in the healing art, which is what I apply, whether in my 38 years of practice professionally, to each individual that comes to me. It's what I apply to social systems and everything else. And in the healing art, and one of the bases is, of course, you want the best information, you want to know what everybody's coming up with, but we're not living in a test tube in a laboratory under constantly controlled isolation and where we can control the variables. We're living in the alchemical cauldron of the human psyche and the human body, where unconscious genetic structuring, which is not fully expressed. It comes online in different ways at different times, and it can be influenced, is merging with deep subconscious feeling patterns of survival, all kinds of sophisticated feeling responses and conditioned programming socially, and self-conscious thought and transcendent peaks into more expanded levels of awareness, things that go beyond how you're normally used to seeing things, all in a changing dynamic environment. So in the healing art, you want the information, but you have to be able to apply individual application. In other words, you're not adjusting people or groups or whatever the consideration is to some statistical norm. And we want to talk about reductionism a lot because that's what's going on right now. You're looking at what is the comfort level, the dynamic of the comfort level of each person, because the more at ease they are, the more access they have, the more they can come and go, the less susceptible they are, and the better they can see. So basically there are two approaches to the healing art. The first one, which is where we've been basically fixated on throughout history, is resolving blockages and hopefully restoring balance. Now, it's highly questionable how we go about that. And it's even questionable whether the people professing to do such really want to do that, or because it's a sickness industry right now. And a lot of people are making big money in keeping people imbalanced, keeping them junkies to their own fear and the resultant metabolic disturbances that occur. But we have all kinds of ways of trying to do that, and then there are natural methods. When I look at somebody, okay, the body's imbalanced. There's too much here, too little there. There's nutritional deficiency, oxygen deficiency. There's excess accumulation. The influences of the psyche are being recycled through these imbalances and adapting around them and further exacerbating the situation. So what's imbalanced here? It's resulted in blockage, which has resulted in accumulation of toxins, which has resulted in inflammation, has the whole system in an alarm state. It's keeping the metabolism or the neurophysiology from functioning at the level it could. And it's if left to go on, this lack of ease in the body turns into a continuously vexing state of dis-ease. And if that dis-ease, that imbalance, perpetuates itself long enough, then you're going to wind up with identifiable symptoms as the systems break down, and we'll call that disease, according to whatever symptoms are identified. Well, we need to figure out what the body isn't getting enough of, because the cardinal rule is input-output. If you're going to use up energy, physically, emotionally, mentally, whatever, then something has to pay for that expenditure of energy. And if you don't have it, then you're going to inadvertently borrow from an organ or gland system, tissue system, to feed the demands you're putting on another one, which causes the imbalance. If you have plenty of energy and the system's in balance, you can go at a high speed with very little wear and tear. But now we have a blockage. We need to break up the blockage. We need to restore balance. This holds true on the emotional and the mental level also. So, but the blockage, just because you give it something it needs and you stop giving it something it doesn't need, doesn't necessarily disappear. That's going to take some skill and some application, because tissues become locked up. Feelings become locked up. So you have to know how to coax, nurture the body or the mind back into a space of being able to regain its at least basic level of functioning. Now, that's one approach to the healing arts. The other one, the one that really intrigues me even more, of course we want to take care of the negative, is how can we optimally enhance the functional range of whatever a person is capable of processing? In other words, how good can you come to feel? How safely and effectively? Because anybody can yo-yo a system. You take this, you go off here. And that's interesting, because it shows you that this is available to the physiology and the nervous system. But you can create further imbalances. But once you've touched it, at least you know it's available. But how safely and effectively can we increase the physical vitality, the mental stamina, the clarity? How much can we enlarge the range of sensitivity and the balance point? That's what we're looking for, that will allow you to be at ease, to control these forces within you and around you, rather than being buffeted and torn and wind up juggling, trying to handle them. So we've got two approaches to health. If I can offer you an image, think of, we've got a big red heart. You know how we draw the picture of a heart, like a Valentine? And that from that heart, there are two arms extending. And on one arm, in the hand of one arm, we've got dealing with problems while trying to hold back the tide, which is basically what we've been talking about a lot. In the other hand, we've got forging ahead into a more expansive, inclusively integrated, dynamic creativity. But what's in the center? Where's the balance point? In that center, in the heart center, it's harmony and understanding. And without that, you're going to always wind up lopsided and create problems, whether it's in the body or the mind. So we want to talk about applying that to these horrendous conditions that are threatening people, and even more so to what will make life more satisfying and fulfilling and give people the energy, according to their particular interests and inclinations. Not everybody is ready for the same thing. They should have the opportunity, but it doesn't mean that that's what they want. What will allow them to move ahead comfortably at their own pace? Dean, please.
Okay, sure. I have had patients that say to me, when I explain how they became afflicted with a condition, don't tell me. I just don't want to feel like this anymore. Now, there's a skill in an art form, in carpentry, in painting, in singing. Medically, let's say, instead, let's call it healing. Because we're talking on the second point that Anne is making, how good can it get? How good can you make me feel? I would be surprised if our audience had doctors which are, in a particularly interesting society of people who give their power away. That is not really their original, their intention. When they were designed to be healers, they were meant to give the power to the patient. So because this has turned around so that I won't make a decision without my doctor's advice, I mean, that comes up in every, disclaimer on, ask your physician, ask your doctor. Okay, there's some knowledge there. Got it. But you're ultimately becoming aware when you're healing. So when you're getting the message, it says, oh, you mean I can feel good? I mean, I can feel even better than I feel right now? I'm healthy because my bone density scan came back and it said that I've got, good calcium levels and my blood pressure's okay and my cholesterol levels were not high. So I'm healthy. Well, you've just identified markers that had given you some indication that you weren't suffering from levels that were outside the norm. That does not mean you're healthy. And what Am is saying here is that by bringing in the idea that you can achieve a level of high health, high living, high function without having a dependency. This is where I was coming around to the motivation point. If we're in a place of independency, and it isn't just throwing out there that, yeah, you can become independent. I'm talking about achieving a degree of decision-making based on what you've really wanted all along. If you continue to run from one condition or another, then pain becomes something you run from. Or not being able to have any energy. I've seen a lot of patients lately that are just zapped. They don't have any energy. Well, if you're running from something, it will eventually catch up to you. That's where, when we talk about being in a place of awareness, yes, the physician has some knowledge, but it has been reducing in the place of empowering you, the patient. And if you are a doctor out there listening to this, I hope that you have made that decision on your own that says that I'm not going to treat patients with the kind of attitude that I am always going to be superior, that I am going to rule their life, that I am given the credentials to take or to give or take life from them. Because these are subconscious patterns. When they learn a skill, but they're also given a particular status in society that says that they can either give them a medication, tell them how to do things. You can't make anybody do anything. You can't change people. But when you play into their fears, that's where they're comfortable. And when they're used to that, then the manipulations, the control becomes easier and easier. Well, Am and I are here to break that cycle for you and to make you aware that this is what's going on. Had to happen in our previous shows. What we now need to do is instruct how to get there. So, Am, please.
All right. Well, to quote an advanced prototypical icon of human development, whoever is greatest among you will serve the most. Not be served, serve. Be of service. All right, let me remind you, you have the unmitigated right to reevaluate and change your mind. Maybe you committed to something. You believed it wholeheartedly. You dedicated your life to it. You know, this is it. And you were very sincere. You meant it. But suddenly, in the course of your interactions, you take a few more steps down the road, you start to come upon insight and perspectives and information you didn't even know existed when you made that original commitment, whether it was to yourself or someone else. Do you say, well, maybe that's true, but, you know, I've got this commitment going and I have to follow through on it? Or do you say, you know, I totally meant it. I was sincere when I said it. But now that I've got this new information, I need to reevaluate it and see how valid it is, whether it still holds, and make the appropriate adjustments. Now, most of us don't. Why? How do you change your mind? I don't mean change your thought structure. Well, I'd rather be this way, or it should be this way, or I want to be peaceful and loving, or I'm not going to put up with that. That's nice to think. But how do you actually have that work, not just from your thoughts, but through your feelings and your physical body and the overall interactive personality that you use to interface with the world? To be candid, and I know this sounds very far-fetched, but at the extremely tender age of 4 years old, I became unmistakably aware that something was wrong with everybody. I didn't know exactly where it came from or how it worked, but I could see it with such shocking clarity. I felt at the time I was alone with a monster that was not only threatening me, but everybody else, and that I was going to have to deal with it. At the age of 11, I wound up about 3/4 of the way through consecrating my life to understanding human consciousness, how it processes, why we have the problems we do with it, and what's involved in finally resolving it and healing that condition so we can move on. And that has led me through many decades on a very interesting, fascinating voyage. But along the way, I came up with what I call the process. And I mention that because this is something I want to make people aware of, because I think it can make a constructive difference. In terms of its technique, I'd love to get the professional community aware of it, because it would not only enhance the quality and range of each particular person using it, but it would make them more effective. But I subtitled it 5 Steps to Self-Actualization. Isn't that what it's all about? Actualizing our human potential in the unique, idiosyncratic way that it pertains to each and every one of us, becoming comfortable and fully integrated inside. And so, how do you change your mind? Well, the first thing I realized is that people were stuck. That their feelings, no matter how brilliant they were, or how much they disciplined themselves or avoided or insisted, they were always fighting themselves. They could go off and win accolades, excel in something, but how many times have you seen the twisted hero, the twisted artist, the twisted executive? They're great at what they do, but their lives are a mess. They're very unhappy. They're confused. They're acting out. They're trying to compensate. So how do you break the grip of the subconscious? And I figured out what was going on, where all this was coming from, why, and what's involved. Now imagine, if you would, as I said, I'd like to intrigue you with possibilities of being freer and more open, more integrated, more whole, being able to come and go more comfortably than you do at present, so that we can interact with each other. We're more fun to play with the more comfortable we feel inside. Imagine that you've broken the locks on the subconscious. Your feelings are now malleable. All these things going all the way back to deep levels of body programming. You can now change them at will. Okay, you don't have to deny yourself, feel you're inadequate or undeserving. You don't no longer have to be, no longer have that primal sense of dread, of fear that's always stalking you in the back of your mind, making you sabotage or trade off, where you can never be fully complete because if you get too good in one area, you almost feel compelled somehow, irrationally, to mess up in another area. To imagine if you feel you have your own power, not just that, yes, I'm a citizen and I have the right to think my own thoughts and live, but you feel this comfortably inside. You don't have to go through someone else to access your rights. It's certainly fun to be with someone when you want to combine energies. Hey, maybe we can put this together here, do something that's really constructive or creative or fun. But it's lousy to be there out of compulsion, feeling you have to give your power away. Feeling, representing the patriarchal disparity between the genders that's causing a lot of confusion and really inhibiting our progress. Now imagine if all those things were cleared out, your feelings are now open and adaptive and malleable to you. But you're stuck with all these old patterns that you created and that's all you know before you got this sense of freedom. Now imagine if you can trace back any pattern of feeling response that you have, whether it's friendship, business, play, health, whatever, spirit, and you can open your mind to where you first locked into it. You've overlaid it, you've sophisticated it, you rationalized it through the years, but back to the primal level when you locked in, break the grip on it, evaluate it, and then reestablish new patterns, not just as intellectual ideas, but so that when you're too tired or too disoriented to keep it up on the mental level, instead of falling back into the old counterproductive patterns, you now fall into the newer ones that nourish you and pick you up. And anytime you find something better, you can change it again. Now imagine if with that kind of freedom, well, where are we coming from? If you start to understand how to get control of the various levels of perception that you have, your senses, your feelings, your thoughts, not avoid them, not escape them, but you can move in and out and constructively rearrange them at will, or you can leave them alone. You can stay exquisitely, elegantly centered in the moment, aware of everything without feeling compulsively that you have to label and identify and emote. You always have the choice. That means, given the chance to play, you're going to play for all you're worth because you can't be trapped or cheated or stuck. You're no longer afraid, so you can enter into things and move out of them. You always know how to regain center. But still you have all these mental constructs you formed. So imagine that now with the new insight gained from not wasting your energy and more expanded levels of perception, where you're accessing greater spatial relations and the energy frequencies that play out interactively with those spatial relations, now imagine from that insight you want to bring it back into the world. Your thoughts now control your feelings, and your feelings are influencing your physiology. Now imagine if you can take any thought you want, not just as a momentary fantasy or wish fulfillment, program it into your psyche, whether it's for 2 seconds or for 20 years, and have it actually have an effect, change the way you process, and change it anytime you get better information. Well, what you have is a nervous system that's ready to rock and roll, ready to play, ready to interact, ready to take its own space. One that can't be pushed around, isn't host receptive to parasitical manipulation. Well, now we have a whole new ball game. And just like the idea of personal freedom and liberty and responsibility replacing being autocratically pushed into being chattel, I'd like to suggest that we can come online quickly and effectively, start to feel more comfortable so that we're ready to interact with each other more deeply, and take these things wherever you are on the food chain. And the boys at the top of the chain need a lot of help on this level so that you can play. You got more access, congratulations. But that you feel whole enough and complete enough not to reduce everything to what seems to give you access and power, but for the benefit of yourself and each and every one of us.
Guys, did you even notice that we ran an hour?
Well, I knew we were doing that today, Gary, but so I hope I was. Yeah, I'm just getting started here, Gary.
Yeah,
But
all good things must come to an end, and I've only got a couple of minutes left in this
thank,
segment, and you got to do that blatant self promotion thing. People got to know where to find more.
thank you, my dear friend. But don't think of it as an end. Think of it as an ongoing continuance, please.
Bingo.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for allowing us to share with you. And we have a lot more to provide. As I said, this is the beginning of a new trajectory for us. And we're going to be dealing with a lot of subjects through the healing arts. If you want to see some of my personal insights and thoughts, the process I mentioned is nutshelled outlined on my website. You'll find it under the process, along with the Geigers. There's podcasts. There's some excerpts from my most literary books, two most recent ones. So please visit www.lifegame.com. There's a contact information. Love to know what you think, and if you have any questions, anything we can share with you that might help further your own successes. Thank you. Dean.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful. I just wanted to make the last point, and then I'll give out my website. And if I could motivate you, from what place would this come from? How about from a comfortable, integrated emotionally, seeing how it works and have control over myself place? And it's interesting because you mentioned the heart analogy earlier. In Chinese medicine, we talk about how heart attacks come to be. And most of the time, it's from a lack of joy and a lack of control over your life. Well, let's start working on this in future shows even more than we have been. Go to my website if you'd like to ask questions, because we love questions, www.acutone.com. You'll see also the radio show, you'll see my clinic and my book information there. And you can certainly email us, and we will be available for comments at our other shows. You can see them there. And thank you again, Gary, for your wonderful your work at the dials and making sure we can hear each other clearly.
All right, guys. Well, on that note, I'm going to have to take us out because we've eaten up every second I could give you. Thank you so much for participating in the United We Strike Marathon.
Hi, this is recording master Tim Hewitt for United We Strike, saying join us every second Saturday of each month for the United We Strike Radio Marathon, and the 15th of each month, where we do the thing of don't buy, don't comply, and ask why.